Are you ready to break free from the doubts and limits holding you back? Welcome to Embrace Your Value, where therapy meets coaching to help you unlock your true worth and take control of your life.
Hi, I'm Kristen, a trauma therapist dedicated to helping you heal, break old patterns, and reclaim your power.
And I'm Jen, your support coach, here to show you how to set fierce boundaries, embrace self compassion, and step boldly into the life you deserve.
So, whether you're stuck in self doubt or feeling lost, know this: your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to own it.
Every week, we tackle real issues that challenge, inspire, and empower you to live with purpose and confidence.
So, grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's get started.
Because you're not here to play small, it's time to embrace your value.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Kristen and Jen, and we have a episode today on celebrating the small wins. And this episode focuses on the transformative power of small wins and how they can fuel long-term success. Many people set grand, big goals, but feel overwhelmed by the process. By shifting your focus to small, actionable steps and celebrating those steps, we can create sustainable momentum toward meaningful change. So, Jen, what would you like to say about that?
I am excited about this episode. First of all, I have to say that celebrating wins is actually not something I was very good at until I learned to do it as a coach. So, this will be an interesting topic because it is something that I encourage my clients to do a lot, but it is also something I've had to work on and make happen in my own life because I had this mindset that nobody really cared about what was going on in my life. Yes, they wanted me to help them. They didn't really care about the other stuff. And what I've since learned is that yes, they do. And yes, they want to know. And the more I tell people about things that I have going on, the more excited they get and the more it inspires other people. So I'm just saying that because if you feel that way, let's change that thinking. Let's shift that because really it does inspire other people. And it is a really good way. It doesn't have to be braggy. It doesn't mean you're looking for praise and accolades. I mean, you can be, and that can be fine. But it could just be from a place of who else can I inspire by all the amazingness and all the good things that are going on in my life. And if other people don't see it that way and they think you're being braggy, that's a them issue, not a you issue. You don't have to worry
Yeah,
about it.
totally agree with that one. We are only in charge of our own issues, right? So I really want to just piggyback on that and say that I think sharing small pieces of your experience, of your life, of your wins, and specifically for this episode, makes you very relatable, right? As a coach, as a therapist, I think people feel makes them feel more comfortable. It makes them feel like it's not quite so positional, right? Like you're still the expert, but you're also like a real person. And so I think that's kind of the feedback I've gotten from clients is like, I really like you because you seem like a real person. And I'm like, well, that's great because I am a real person. And so I think I like that model. And some therapists specifically, I don't know how coaches are, but some therapists specifically share absolutely nothing about their personal lives because then they feel it's making the session about them. But I think there's a way to do it where you can just be more engaged in the client's treatment by sharing your experiences because as you found out, Jen, when you share, people want to know what's going on with you. They're invested in you as a person, as their coach. They're invested in you. And now they're interested in like, how is your life going? And it can also be a great example, like you were saying, about how you can help them change their life.
Exactly. And it just, I don't know, it really does make you relatable. So I had to learn to push that worry aside and push that mindset away and just let it be. And now I tell people things that I want them to know, and sometimes they don't want to know, and I tell them anyway. So, Kristen, from a psychological perspective, what are some of the impacts of achievement? No matter whether they're big or small, what are some of those psychological impacts?
Yeah, I love that because this is something I talk about a lot with people. When we do the small things, then the big things come, right? So even if we do things like let's make three things that we're grateful for each day, that's a very minuscule thing to be doing. It might take you 30 seconds to figure them out. It might take you 2 minutes, but in the grand scheme of your day, that's a very small part of your day. So the psychological impact of that is achievement, right? And so having some achievement, and that's why I do things like homework, right? It's so they can practice what we talk about in session, between sessions, but also it keeps the brain going, right? And they can experience small wins along the way. And that feeling of achievement releases dopamine, which encourages your motivation to do more and a sense of accomplishment. So that can do nothing but boost how you feel about yourself, right? And so I really encourage people to let's not worry about so much what we don't do and let's focus on what we are doing. Like what is happening now, not what has not happened. I mean, we still want to get things done, but let's focus on the wins. And so the ripple effect for small wins is it creates confidence, builds momentum, and that gets us to those larger goals, right? Those bigger things in life that we really want to achieve. And so it's just about breaking those things down into smaller pieces.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I totally agree with that. And that kind of leads me into thinking about all or nothing thinking. And I know, again, I'm going to use myself because I'm very much a black and white person who has had to learn to bring some gray in because I've been an all or nothing kind of thinker. And so it's really something to look out for when you feel like, or I'm not going to have any wins. And so this is kind of my question for you, our listeners, is how can you bring some balance into that and find in a day where you feel like you have no wins, like nothing's going right, how can you find something small to be grateful for and to call a win? Where can you start to shift? Because that's really how you do it. That's how you shift that thinking is you look at it and you go, well, everything's ruined. My day was horrible. I couldn't get this done. I couldn't get that done. Nothing went right. But I guarantee you something went right. You're overlooking it. And I get that because when we get that way, we get overwhelmed and we feel like we can't do it. So I would just encourage you to break your day down into some smaller bits and find those good things, even if it's super small, even if it's, hey, I ordered lunch and they got it right. That's a win. Let's take that. Let's grow on that. Okay, well, that worked. Hey, you weren't late with a project and your boss actually said, good job. Did you hear it? Did you hear your boss compliment you? Or did you put it out of your mind because you'd had such a crappy day that you were only thinking about the two things that you messed up on? That's where it is. Focusing on the good, the positive, the wins will start to shift everything for you. And that's what we want because those are the things that give you the big results. Starting small, taking bite sized steps will grow into something much bigger and make those wins bigger for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you're talking about sometimes what happens to people who struggle with things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, you get kind of overwhelmed and in sort of a frozen state. And so you can't even think of these smaller goals or micro goals to even try to push forward. And so that's when I'm encouraging people to just find little tiny things to do. So realistic, incremental goals. So I'll say things like, okay, we're committed to working out between now and next session. How many times do you think you can work out? And they're like, 5 times in the next week. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't even work out 5 times, but let's make it a very realistic, attainable goal so that you don't start feeling shame or guilt around not achieving that goal. So I say, let's shoot for 5 and make sure we do 2. So that way, again, as I was saying before, once we start hitting even that small goal, you're much more motivated to then move into the bigger goals and they become more realistic. So, today I'll spend 10 minutes journaling. Great. You know what? Maybe you can only do 5. Also fine. I feel like we talked about this in a different episode when we were talking about like maybe meditation or mindfulness. So just doing little tiny things. Also, making sure that you track that progress, right? So I love writing things down. I think there's just so many things that are great about that hit different parts of the brain, right? You're doing something tactile, you're moving your body in some way, and you're engaging your brain in a different way than you do when you're just typing on your phone. So that's me. I know you're more techy than me sometimes, but I'm very much like a write things down. So I think just having a list of some of these attainable, small attainable goals, there's something very satisfying about like checking things off or crossing things. Like I'm trying to write a report and I've got a list of things that I need to do. And so I'm literally checking them off as I go so that I make sure that I'm doing them, but also like, oh, there were 9, 10, there were 10, and now there's only 5. So, I got some ways to do that. So, Jen, what are some ways that you would suggest that clients celebrate? Creative ways to celebrate these wins.
So, this is a great question because I work with a lot of clients who don't always have a ton of disposable income. And so, with that, they are always like, oh, well, don't tell me to go get a pedicure or don't tell me to go get a massage because that's not what I'm going to do. And that's great. If that's what you want to do, go do that. But I'm really more about how are you celebrating yourself? So to me, celebrating those wins could just be calling up a friend and saying, oh my gosh, I accomplished this. So I just finished a certification program that I was doing. And when I finished, I called like 3 people and told them because they were all people that knew about what I had been doing. They'd been along the journey with me. And I called them and I sent them pictures of the certification. And I was like, hey, I did it. I finally finished. And I didn't have to use the word finally. And maybe I didn't even, because it really didn't take me. I mean, it was a 6 month certification. It didn't take me but 3 months, but I finished it. And so that was a way for me to celebrate that. And so just telling someone, talking to people about stuff like that is really just a great way to show yourself that you acknowledge what happened and that it builds confidence. It really builds confidence because now I'm going to go into another certification program and be like, look, I have this, this, and this under my belt already. When I do the next one, it's just going to be that much easier. It's going to be that much better. It's going to go that much quicker or that much, like I'm going to do so much better with it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I tell people when you're celebrating your wins. That's the best thing I think you can do is to share that with other people because it also builds that sense of community for you. And you know where you have your safe spaces. You also may learn where you don't want to share with certain people. And I think that's important to understand. If you tell somebody something and they're not excited for you, it may not mean that they don't get excited for you. It may mean that they're just having a bad day or that it hit them wrong, but it may mean that they might be jealous of you and they're not somebody you want to start sharing with. That's good. Mark that on your list. Be like, hey, this person, not for me. I don't need to share things with them. Doesn't mean you can't still love them. Doesn't mean you can't still support them if you want to support them. But maybe it means you save yourself a little heartache and protect your energy and you don't always share your things with them. I think that's an important thing to kind of take in. Excuse me. And I want to go back to the tracking thing because my favorite way to track, which to me is still celebrating, is to have a paper tracker and stickers. I love stickers. I love to play with stickers. I love to put stickers on things. And I love to see, like for me, I love to see when I'm building a habit, all the stickers line up and then I never miss a day. That's when I start celebrating. I'm like, look, I got 10 stickers in a row and I haven't missed. And that's exciting. And that's really, I mean, to me, that's celebrating your wins. That's doing it. So, Kristen, what are some good ways to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, that is great. And I think that piggybacks perfectly on what you're talking about, which is making sure that we document somehow, whether it be verbally to another person or a spreadsheet or a sticker chart. I love that. There's a lot of fun and frivolity and sort of like putting stickers on, it's nostalgic maybe. So I would say that's definitely the way to perpetuate the momentum and do those small wins. I would say, the other thing you said is you love it when the stickers all line up and they're all on the same day. Um, that's a visual representation of the small accomplishments that you made every single day or however your increments go. So I think what people struggle with is this goes back to your black and white is like if I miss a day, then now I failed. So making sure that we stay out of that mindset in all the ways that you spoke about, Jen, is that if you miss a day, it's okay. Like nobody's perfect. Perfectionism is something that's completely unattainable. So we just have to sort of say, we're all fallible, we're all humans, and we're just going to keep moving. The other thing I think people struggle with is complacency. So maybe they get used to seeing those stickers all the way across every single week or every single month or whatever. And so it's like, okay, well, I obviously got that. Yay. So now it's time to set a new goal. And maybe it's a micro goal that goes into your larger, bigger goal. Or maybe now we've achieved the big goal. We need to set a new big goal. So I think that is another way to continue the momentum so that we can keep going. And then, a little something about this, Jen, but having like an accountability partner or making sure that you journal or track your progress like you were talking about. But I love the idea of sharing it with a trusted friend or sharing it with a coach or your therapist. I mean, people are far more accountable to me than they are to themselves. So when they tell me they're going to do something, I always make sure I write it down for them and say, okay, well, we're going to circle back around this for next time. And I love the idea of being able to like just ask them and then celebrate with them. I think the celebration thing is great with people, but I think a lot of us need accountability partners as well.
Absolutely. And, that's the thing with, so I'm going to touch base a little bit on the accountability partner thing because here's the thing with a good accountability partner. And I want to set you guys up for success. I don't want to just say, go find an accountability partner because a lot of times what happens is we find someone that doesn't need accountability from us or isn't in alignment with our goals. So when you're looking for an accountability partner, I always suggest finding someone who also needs some accountability. Doesn't have to be exactly the same thing, but so you can each be each other's accountability partner. Because if you're checking in with them, they're then going to check in with you. Like it's more symbiotic and it works better. If they don't need it, you're probably going to do it for a few weeks, maybe a few days. But honestly, it's going to drop off because they don't need it. They're not getting anything. It's not reciprocal. and they're not getting anything out of it and they're going to forget. And I get that. The other thing is, and I love to use this example, is if you're, I'm just using this as the example, if you're looking to lose weight, do not enlist the help of your spouse unless they are also doing that same thing. Because I can tell you, when I'm working on my weight and my husband tells me I cannot have that cookie, I'm going to throat punch him to have that cookie. And he is not going to tell me that because I don't want to hear that from him. But if Kristen called me and said, Jen, how many cookies did you eat today? And I said, 4. And she says, you don't need that many, just have one. I'd say, okay, you're right. And I'd probably do it. But if it's my husband, I'm going to no, because I don't want him to have that kind of control. So be choosy in who your accountability partner is. And you don't have to have just one. You can try a couple until you find the perfect one. Or you might need 2 or 3. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be choosy. Don't feel like you have to just pick someone and stick to it, because this is important. Having a good accountability partner is important, and you want to make sure that you do that correctly. So, Kristen, we've talked a little bit about this. I brought up some confidence, and I think Kristen did too, but let's talk about the link between small wins and self worth.
Yeah. Small wins are going to just increase your self-worth. I kind of said that at the top of the podcast, but it will help you recognize and have some tangibility in embracing your value. So when we continue to have small wins and we continue to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish, then we will continue to build value and worth in ourselves. Now, I love the accountability partner thing, especially with the spouse. I think that can be a tough one, especially like when people are in recovery, like your spouse can't be your recovery partner and things like that. But also just being mindful of external validation versus internal validation. And so, like, having an accountability partner is about, like, how can we work together? You said symbiotic, which I think is a great word. How can we work together? Not how can you just always tell me how great I'm doing and then I don't believe it. Right. So the only way to move your self-worth needle is to believe when that person says, hey, Jen, you only had one cookie today. That's awesome. Right? What a great thing that you only had one cookie. And then you have to go, I did only have one cookie, and I'm really excited about that. Versus, well, I had one cookie still, right? So taking the win, making sure that you use the momentum to move forward. And I think that's where it connects with self-worth and value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add one thing to that. And this is something that I do talk about a lot with my clients, is that I believe small wins helps us have motivation to do more and to do other things. I don't believe that we can sit on the couch and go, I'm going to get motivated to go clean up the kitchen. It's not how it works. You get up, you do something small, it works, you get excited, and you go, okay, now I can tackle something else. Winning builds motivation. Motivation is not something we can pull out of thin air and use. Some people might be able to, but I know I can't. I have to get in motion to have motivation. And when I'm in that motion, I have to have some sort of a small win with it. So I just wanted to add that because that builds self-confidence as well and self-worth. It definitely boosts my self-esteem when I'm like, oh, look at what I did. Yeah, I can clean house. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do clean house, but it is not my favorite thing to do. So there are days I'm like, I don't have the motivation for it. And sometimes you do it, and sometimes, well, you don't. And that's okay. But yeah. So anything else you want to add, Kristen, that we maybe missed or didn't cover?
No, I think we've encompassed everything that we set out to do. Of course, we'd love to hear from listeners and viewers about any feedback that you guys have about anything that we said or any questions, or if you need any encouragement or help, we would love for you to email us. All the information's down in the show notes, and all that information is out there for you individually. One of us will personally email you back if you send in an email. So we would love to be able to interact with you in that way. But other than that, Jen, I think we're good for today.
Yeah, this was a great episode. Thank you guys for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you for being here with us today.
If today's episode hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because everyone deserves to know their worth.
Next week, we're diving even deeper with more insights and tools to help you break free from limitations and live authentically.
Until then, keep raising your standards, owning your worth, and embracing your value.